Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. It was at a logistics drive downtown. I was helping with accounting for donations, and Evelyn was the one directing volunteers with a clipboard in her hand. Evelyn carried herself with precision, like she knew how to run a room without raising her voice. When she came over to ask about the numbers I was tallying, I noticed her sharp tone wasn't arrogance, it was focus. We ended up talking long after the event wrapped. She told me she worked in organizational training for a mid-sized firm. I just started building a consultancy of my own, nothing big yet, but steady enough to pay my bills. What stood out was how quickly the conversation shifted from polite small talk to real things, careers, family backgrounds, what kind of life we wanted. She was clear. She didn't want drama, just progress. I liked that. Our dating rhythm wasn't flashy. We met for early coffee before work, walked the riverfront on Sundays, and made plans like two people who thought ahead. A year in, Evelyn still asked about my projects with real curiosity, and I admired how she handled challenges at her job. There was no push and pull for control, only respect. 2 years after we met, we got married in a modest ceremony. No rented hall, no oversized guest list, just the people who mattered. Evelyn moved into the house I already owned, bought with my grandmother's insurance payout years earlier. The place wasn't huge, but it was mine outright. She seemed happy with that, even joked once that she'd never thought she'd marry into a place that didn't come with a mortgage. Our finances were simple. We kept individual accounts, opened a joint one for shared costs, and lived within what we earned. I paid property taxes and building fees. She handled groceries and utilities. It wasn't glamorous, but it worked. In those first couple of years, Evelyn wasn't chasing late nights or endless outings. She had a handful of friends she saw once in a while, but most of her time was either with me or on her own interests. We made decisions together, talked about what came next, and built routines that felt like they'd last. At that point, I thought we were set on the same path. I had no reason to expect otherwise. Around our 3rd year of marriage, Evelyn reconnected with 2 women she knew from college. Evelyn introduced them casually at first, Maya Collins and Lena Brooks. It wasn't until later that I saw just how much influence they carried. Maya had gone through 2 divorces and built a podcast out of her experiences. She spoke openly about how she'd wasted years catering to men and how she was now focused solely on herself. According to Evelyn, Maya framed it as self-sovereignty. The way Evelyn repeated that phrase told me it struck a chord. Lena was different, single, restless, and working in event promotions. She thrived on nightlife and surprise plans, always bragging about the thrill of living without ties. Evelyn said Lena was the fun one, someone who could make ordinary evenings feel like an adventure. At first, I encouraged Evelyn's renewed friendships. She hadn't built much of a network since moving into my neighborhood, and I thought reconnecting with familiar faces might help. When she said she was meeting Maya and Lena for dinner once a month, it seemed harmless. She came home with stories, laughter in her voice, like she'd rediscovered part of her old self. I thought it was good for her. But slowly, their influence seeped in. Our simple check-ins, "When will you be home?" or "What's the plan this weekend?" turned into points of friction. Evelyn would roll her eyes and say, "Do I need permission to step out?" That was new. We had always coordinated out of respect, not because either of us demanded control. She also started speaking differently about our life together. Before, she said things like, "We should plan for this," or "Our next step could be." Now she said, "I want to do this," or "I've been thinking about what I need next." Small words, but they changed the tone completely. Nights out became more frequent too, twice a week. Then 3. Sometimes she'd walk in close to midnight, brush past my questions, and disappear into the bedroom with her phone glowing in her hand. I told myself it was just a phase, that she was simply reconnecting with old friends. But every time she came home from those outings, she carried with her new arguments, new complaints, as if the conversations she had with them were now happening inside our marriage. The orbit of our relationship was shifting, and I wasn't the one pulling the gravity anymore. By the 4th year, the changes weren't subtle anymore. Evelyn started framing ordinary conversations as battles for control. One night, I asked, "Are you going to be home for dinner tomorrow?" She set her fork down and said, "Why do you always need to know where I am?" It feels like surveillance. I answered evenly. It's not surveillance. I'm just trying to plan a meal. Her eyes narrowed. That's what men always say when they want to keep tabs. Planning is just another word for control. That wasn't Evelyn talking. That was Maya's podcast echoing in my kitchen. The shifts kept stacking. She began skipping family commitments, telling me last minute she had better things to do. Once she texted at 9 p.m. that she wasn't coming home that night because Lena had dragged her into some overnight collab for an event. When I asked about it the next day, she brushed me off with, "You wouldn't understand." At home, she started posting articles on her social media about women trapped in soft prisons of comfort and partners who confuse control with care. She never tagged me, but I didn't need to be tagged to know who those posts were about. I kept calm, asked questions directly, and never raised my voice. But her answers grew evasive. If I pressed, she accused me of being rigid. If I stayed quiet, she accused me of being indifferent. Either way, it became an argument. One Saturday morning, I brought up a bill from our joint account. This charge from Friday night. What's it for? Her face hardened. Do I need your approval for how I spend money? I said, approval? No, but I expect transparency. We agreed the joint account was for us, not individual projects. She leaned back in her chair, almost smiling. Maybe our definitions are different now. That line stuck with me. It was her way of saying the rules had changed, unilaterally. The house we once shared like a team started to feel like two strangers testing boundaries, and she was pushing harder every week. The breaking point came one evening when I walked in from work and found Evelyn at the dining table with her laptop open, a half-packed suitcase beside her chair. She looked up casually. I'm joining a creative collective in Bali, a month-long residency. Flights are booked. I stared at the suitcase, then back at her. Booked with whose money? She closed the laptop. The deposit came from our joint account. I'll cover the rest later. I kept my voice level. You withdrew $3,000 without a word to me? For a month out of the country? Her jaw tightened. Charlie, it's not about the money. This is about me investing in myself. I've always supported your work. Now it's my turn. I shook my head. Supporting each other doesn't mean announcing life-altering decisions after they're already made. Marriage is supposed to be discussion first, action second. Her eyes flashed. That's your rule. My friends don't need a committee vote to live their lives. I sat down opposite her. This isn't about your friends. This is about respect. If you want to take a trip, we can talk about it. You don't drain our account and tell me after the fact. She pushed the suitcase against the wall with her foot. Maybe I'm done asking permission. That was never what it was. It was coordination, partnership. But Evelyn had already decided to frame it as control. That night, she moved into the spare bedroom, saying she needed space to reset. What followed wasn't silence. It was a cold performance. She walked past me in the hallway without a glance, ate dinner alone, and answered my attempts at conversation with clipped one-word replies. I gave her room, thinking the tension might ease. It didn't. Each day that passed, she seemed more certain of her new rules and less interested in anything resembling compromise. It was no longer about Bali. It was about whether our marriage meant anything at all to her. It was a Thursday night when Evelyn finally showed her hand. I came home late from a client meeting and found her waiting at the dining table, a neat stack of papers in front of her, no ring on her finger. She didn't waste time. Charlie, I want to live for myself, without you. I've already spoken to an attorney. These are the separation documents. I looked at the papers, then at her. Calmly, I said, so that's it. No discussion, no counseling, just papers. Her arms crossed tightly. Discussion? Every time we talk, you act like I owe you explanations. I don't. I deserve freedom. I need space to build my own life. I nodded once. Then go ahead. Live for yourself, but not in my house, not on my dime. Her mouth opened slightly, as if she hadn't expected that response. For the first time in months, she looked uncertain. You think you can just throw me out? She asked, voice rising. No, I said evenly. I'm saying you don't get both. You don't get to leave the marriage but keep the benefits of it. The house is mine. Bought before we even met. Paid for in full. Your name isn't on the deed. If you want out, you're free to go. But you won't be living here, and you won't be drawing from my resources." She snapped back, "I'll take half of everything. That's what marriage means." I stood there, steady. "Then we'll let the court decide. But you already know whose name is on the title, and it isn't yours." The next morning she was gone, suitcase in hand, staying at Maya's place. From that point on, communication went through attorneys. The woman who once planned meals with me, walked markets with me, now wanted to dismantle everything we'd built, and she thought she'd walk away with half of what I owned. For the first time since all this started, I wasn't angry. I was resolved. The legal fight stretched for more than a year. Evelyn's lawyer came in swinging, claiming she had rights to my house, part of my firm's revenue, and even spousal support. My attorney, Robert Hayes, kept things sharp. He slid the deed across the table during mediation. The house was purchased 3 years before marriage, paid in full with inherited funds. No joint contributions. This is separate property. Evelyn's lawyer shifted tactics. Mrs. Reed's domestic contributions, managing meals, errands, freed Mr. Reed to build his consultancy. That created value. Robert countered with bank records. Joint account shows proportional expenses. Her payments went to groceries and utilities. Normal household costs. My client covered taxes, insurance, and all major repairs from his own accounts. No evidence of co-investment in property. Evelyn's face flushed during those sessions. She interrupted more than once, snapping, "You're twisting it. He made me believe this was our home." The judge had to remind her twice to let her counsel speak. Then came the Bali charge. Robert laid out the statement. Funds withdrawn from joint account without consent, used for a non-joint purpose. This isn't a partnership, it's unilateral. That point cut deep. Her side backed off on pressing for more of the joint savings once that withdrawal was highlighted. In the end, the judgment was clear. Evelyn got her share of the joint account balance and her personal belongings. She kept her car, which she had always paid for. No spousal support. Our marriage was deemed too short, and she was fully employable. No claim to the house, no share of my firm. The outcome landed with a thud. Evelyn left the courtroom stiff, lips pressed tight, not saying a word. For me, the relief wasn't in keeping the house, it was in the clarity. The law had drawn the line that Evelyn refused to see. Marriage means shared effort, not unilateral withdrawal with guaranteed backup. Walking out of that courthouse, I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the rules of my life again. 2 years passed before I heard from Evelyn again. By then, the dust of the divorce had settled. I focused on my clients, expanded the firm, and kept my life quiet. One Tuesday evening, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen since the court dates. Evelyn Reed. For a moment, I just stared at it. Against better judgment, I answered. Her voice was softer than I remembered. "Charlie. Hi. It's been a while." I stayed neutral. "It has." She hesitated, then launched in. "I wouldn't be calling if it wasn't important. Things are rough right now. I left my job last year to freelance, but it hasn't worked out. I'm behind on rent. I just need some help, a loan to get back on my feet." I let her words hang in the silence. She rushed to fill it. "I'll pay you back, I promise." I thought, even if we're not together, maybe we could still support each other. Finally, I spoke. "Evelyn, you told me you wanted to live for yourself, without me, and that's what you've been doing." Her tone sharpened. "So you're really going to hold that against me? After everything we had?" "No," I said. "I'm holding you to your choice. You wanted independence, and you got it. Asking me to cover your rent now isn't independence. It's dependence on the man you walked out on." There was a long pause before her voice cracked with anger. "You're cruel, vindictive. You'd rather watch me drown than lift a hand." I stayed steady. "I'm consistent. You wanted freedom, and I respected that. I'm not going to undermine it now by stepping back into a role you rejected." She exhaled sharply, muttered something I didn't catch, and hung up. I sat there staring at the quiet phone. No anger, no satisfaction. Just confirmation that I'd made the right call years ago. After that call, I blocked Evelyn's number and her social accounts. There was nothing left to salvage, no conversation that could undo the choices she had made. For the first time since I met her, the chapter was closed on both sides. Life moved forward. My firm grew steadily, and I found the balance I hadn't realized I was missing. A year later, I met Claire Jensen, a product manager with a calm presence and a sharp mind. We built our relationship carefully. No rushing, no blurred lines. She had her career, I had mine, and every major decision was a conversation, not an announcement. One Saturday, while Claire and I were out for coffee, I saw Evelyn across the street. She was walking fast, head down, phone clutched in her hand. For a second, our eyes met. No words, no wave, just a brief recognition. She looked away first. That moment said more than any conversation ever could. She had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. The balance of power was no longer in question. Looking back, I don't regret the way I handled it. Evelyn once told me, straight to my face, "I want to live for myself, without you." My answer then, and my answer now, is the same. Go ahead. But not in my house, not on my dime. I didn't slam doors or shout or beg. I drew a boundary and stood by it. That boundary was what saved me, from losing my home, from losing my business, from losing myself. Today, I live in the same house I once thought was ours. It no longer feels like a battlefield. It feels like mine, steady and unshaken. Claire and I sit at that same dining table where Evelyn once dropped divorce papers, but now the conversations are about travel plans, client schedules, and weekend dinners with friends. The house didn't change. The rules did. And in the end, that made all the difference. Thank you for watching. Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. My name is Matthew Carter, and for a long time I thought I understood the people closest to me. I had been in a relationship with Lillian for 4 years, living together for almost 3. We weren't perfect, but we had a rhythm. Work, dinners, weekends with friends. I believed we were building something steady. I worked as a data analyst at Northbridge Analytics. My boss, Robert Hale, had been circling me with promises of a lead analyst role for nearly a year. He always spoke like it was just around the corner. Be patient, Matthew. End of quarter, maybe sooner. Then the date would slide again, replaced by another dangling timeline. I told myself it was corporate politics, nothing more. Looking back, there were small signals. Robert was overly comfortable around Lillian at the company holiday party, joking with her in a way that didn't sit right. She laughed, touched his arm, then brushed it off when I asked about it later. "He's just being charming," she said. I tried to believe her. The truth broke open on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was sorting through spreadsheets on the shared laptop when a notification popped up in the corner of the screen. It was from Karan Guyan, one of Lillian's friends. The message preview read, "He says he'll keep Matthew hungry until the rollout. Santorini will be perfect once it's over." My stomach sank. I clicked before I could talk myself out of it. The chat window opened and what I saw hollowed me out. Months of messages. Lillian and Kara trading details about her affair with Robert. Snapshots of their meetups, inside jokes at my expense, even commentary about my habits, what shirts I wore, how seriously I took my work. Kara egged her on, calling Robert a catch and mocking me as oblivious. But the part that froze me wasn't the intimacy. It was the way Robert used me like a tool. "Keep him grinding. He'll push those numbers through if he thinks the title is coming." Lillian replied, "He's predictable. We'll use the bonus for Santorini. Robert can join us there." I didn't yell. I didn't throw the laptop. Instead, everything went cold. A switch flipped. This wasn't a moment for rage. It was a moment for precision. I closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long time. The apartment was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge. Lillian was out running errands, completely unaware that I'd just watched 6 months of her secret life unravel. When my hands stopped shaking, I started working. I took screenshots of every thread, every timestamp, every snide remark. I scrolled back to the beginning and didn't stop until I had the full archive. I copied them to a cloud drive, then another, then onto a flash drive I kept in my desk at work. No detail was too small. I wasn't going to give them the chance to deny a thing. That night, I remembered Jenna Petrov, a recruiter I'd met at a data conference the year before. We'd talked briefly about opportunities in the analytics field, and she told me to reach out if I was ever looking. I opened her email and typed, "Hi Jenna, I may be ready for a change. Do you have a moment to talk this week?" Then I hit send. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I updated my resume. By the time I shut down, I had applied to 6 positions. It felt like laying bricks across a bridge I suddenly needed to cross. The next morning, Lillian padded into the kitchen in a robe, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. She set a travel magazine on the counter, open to a glossy spread of Santorini. "Wouldn't it be nice to finally take a trip like this?" "Maybe when your bonus comes in," she said casually. I stirred my coffee and gave her a small nod. "Maybe." She didn't notice the way my eyes lingered on the page, not with longing, but with confirmation. Later that week, when she asked why I was moving boxes to the car, I said, "Just decluttering. Too much stuff lying around." She accepted it without question. She thought she was playing me. What she didn't realize was that I had already started walking away, quietly, step by step, building my exit while she flipped through travel magazines for a trip that was never going to happen. By the end of the week, interviews were stacking up. Jenna had come through quickly, setting me up with 2 companies that needed senior analysts. I kept my tone polite and professional in every conversation, but inside I was running on a steady current of ice. Signal Flux Labs called with an offer. Fully remote, better title, 18% raise. I didn't hesitate. I accepted. The following Monday morning, I walked into Robert Hale's office with a plain envelope. He looked up from his monitor, smiled like we were old friends, and said, "What's on your mind, Matthew?" I placed the letter on his desk. "My resignation. 2 weeks' notice." His smile faltered. "This is sudden. We were just talking about your future here." "A better opportunity came up," I said. My tone was flat, controlled. Robert leaned back in his chair, steepling his hands. "You know, I could make you team lead now. End the waiting. We'll fast-track it. Throw in a raise, 4%. That's real money." I shook my head once. "No, thank you." For a moment, I saw the mask slip. Annoyance flashed across his face before the smirk returned. "Suit yourself. Just don't burn bridges." I walked out without another word. That night at home, I told Lillian. She stared at me. "You quit your job? Without even asking me first? Do you know what that does to our plans? The apartment? The wedding we talked about?" "I'll cover my share for another month," I said calmly. "You'll have time to adjust." Her eyes narrowed. "Unbelievable. You're acting selfish, Matthew." I looked at her evenly. Noted. The lack of reaction threw her off balance. She expected anger, a fight she could twist. Instead, she was left with silence. She didn't know it yet, but the ground under her feet was already gone. Once the resignation was in motion, my focus shifted to preparation. If I wanted this done right, I needed more than screenshots. I needed order, proof that couldn't be dismissed as jealousy or exaggeration. Every night after Lillian fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I compiled the chats into a single document, arranged chronologically. I added annotations, dates, times, connections to work emails, even notes linking Robert's last-minute changes to Lillian's mocking comments. One entry stood out. A Thursday night when Robert dumped an urgent project on me at 8 p.m., Kara's message to Lillian, sent just 20 minutes earlier, read, "He's about to text Matthew. Keep him up all night. More free time for you tomorrow." I highlighted it in red. I didn't just want to show betrayal. I wanted to show misconduct, proof that Robert was leaking sensitive company data and manipulating employees for personal gain. I dug through email archives and found threads where he forwarded internal reports to his personal account. Side by side with the chats, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, at the office, I kept my head down. My projects were wrapped neatly, my documentation flawless. If anyone looked back on my time at Northbridge, I wanted a spotless record. The only person I trusted was Diego Alvarez, a quiet coworker who'd been at the firm longer than I. One evening after hours, I told him I was leaving. Nothing about why, just that a better opportunity came up. Diego sighed. "Robert's burned through a lot of people. I've seen him play the same game, promises, then excuses. You're smart to get out now." His words were confirmation I didn't need but welcomed. Robert wasn't just cruel in private. His pattern was visible, if you knew where to look. By the time my final week arrived, the dossier was finished. A PDF, professionally formatted, labeled, and airtight. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't revenge. It was evidence. And on my calendar, marked for Friday at 3 p.m., was the exit interview with Marissa Boyd, HR director. That would be the moment everything turned. My last morning at Northbridge felt oddly normal. Someone put a tray of cupcakes in the break room with a crooked note that said, "Good luck, Matthew." People shook my hand, wished me well, and went back to their screens. Robert clapped me on the shoulder. "No hard feelings," he said, flashing that polished grin. "The door stays open." "Appreciate it," I replied, giving him nothing. At 2:55 p.m., a reminder flashed on my screen. Exit interview, Marissa Boyd. I picked up my small box, tucked my badge inside, and walked to HR. Marissa's office was bright and spare. She offered water, then opened a form. "Why are you leaving?" "A better fit elsewhere," I said. "Remote role, clear scope." She typed a few lines. "Anything else we should know?" I met her eyes. "Yes." I took out my phone. "I'm about to email you a document. It shows misconduct by Robert Hale, confidential data forwarded to a personal account, manipulation of performance timelines, and a relationship with my girlfriend that influenced work decisions." Marissa didn't blink. I hit send. The subject line read, "Formal documentation regarding Robert Hale." She opened the message on her monitor, clicked the PDF, and read in silence. I watched her cursor stop on the annotated links between Robert's late-night dumps and the chats from Kara's thread. She scrolled back, checked timestamps, and looked again at the forwarded reports. Finally, she closed the file and folded her hands. "Thank you for organizing this so clearly. We will open an investigation immediately. Effective now, Robert's access will be suspended pending review. Your departure will not affect your reference." "Understood," I said. I shook her hand and walked out. No speeches, no scene. In the elevator, I looked at my reflection and felt nothing dramatic. The work was done. That evening, I carried the small box from my desk into the apartment. Lillian was curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up. "You're home early." "It was my last day," I said, setting the box by the door. "Oh, right." She turned back to her screen as if it didn't matter. I stood there a moment, then said quietly, "Lillian, I know about you and Robert." The phone slipped from her hand. Her face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" I saw the messages. On the laptop. Every joke, every plan, every time you laughed at me with him. She shot to her feet. "You had no right to read my private messages. That's insane, Matthew. And Robert had no right to sabotage my career while you conspired with him." My voice didn't rise. It stayed level. "The difference is, I have proof. HR has it now." Her lips parted. Panic flickered in her eyes. "What did you do?" "I told the truth. With evidence. Robert's done at Northbridge." She pressed her hands to her head. No, you can't just..." "He promised..." She stopped herself, then tried again. "We can work this out. You and me. Forget him. I made a mistake." "It's too late," I said. "You have 72 hours to move out. The lease is in my name. I'll give you until Sunday night. That's fair." Her face twisted with fury. "You're throwing me out? After everything I gave you?" I picked up a small overnight bag I had packed earlier and slung it over my shoulder. "You gave me betrayal. I'm done. 3 days, Lillian." "Where are you going?" she demanded. "A rental. I won't spend another night here." She tried one last card, her voice cracking. "I have nowhere else to go." "That's for you to solve." I walked to the door, leaving her standing in the living room, her world collapsing around her. The silence behind me was louder than any argument could have been. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with a call from Diego. "Matthew," he said, his voice low, "it's official. Robert's gone. The termination memo went out this morning. Gross misconduct and breach of confidentiality. They didn't even try to dress it up." I thanked him and hung up. That was all I needed to hear. Meanwhile, Lillian hadn't gone quietly. The 72 hours I gave her turned into a barrage of calls, texts, and voicemails. First came the screaming, "You're ruining my life." Then the bargaining, "We can fix this. Please talk to me." Then the guilt, "You're cruel. I have nowhere to go." I answered once, short and final. Any further communication goes through my lawyer. After that, silence on my end. A mutual acquaintance filled in the gaps later. Lillian had shown up at Northbridge looking for me, causing a scene in the lobby until security escorted her out. She even called Signal Flux Labs' public line, demanding to speak to me, only to be told there was no physical office. Her attempts to chase me down left her humiliated. When I returned to the old apartment with 2 friends to collect the last of my furniture, Lillian was stuffing clothes into bags, eyes red and wild. She muttered angrily about Robert abandoning her, about him cutting her off once the investigation hit. She looked small, cornered, nothing like the woman who once smirked at my expense. For the first time in years, the air around me was quiet, and I realized how much I needed that quiet. Life settled into something simple. My days at Signal Flux were steady. Remote meetings, clear goals, recognition without games. My manager talked about her garden more than office politics. It was ordinary, and that felt like gold. One morning, an email arrived from Marissa Boyd, the HR director at Northbridge. Just one line. "Thank you for the documentation. It helped us address a significant issue. Wishing you success in your new role." I read it twice, then archived it. No satisfaction dance, no gloating, just confirmation that the truth had landed where it needed to. Lillian tried one more time. A long message, half apology and half accusation. "You abandoned me. You ruined us. But I still love you." I didn't open the attachment she sent. I deleted it. At night, I sat in the armchair by the window. I thought back to that Sunday afternoon when I saw Kara's message pop up on the laptop. The shock, the cold calm that followed. I had wanted rage back then, something dramatic to match the betrayal. But what I gave them was worse. Precision. Robert lost his career, Lillian lost her comfort, and I walked away intact. People like them build their own trap. All I did was document it and hand the rope to the right hands. I leaned back. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for anything. No promotion, no approval, no false promise. The story was over, and I had moved on. Thank you for watching.